My office door opened at 9:42 on a Tuesday morning, and my little sister walked in with 2 state detectives and an arrest warrant with my name on it. She did not say hello. She did not say my name. She placed a manila envelope on my desk, straightened her navy blazer, and said, "Margaret Ashford, you are under arrest for 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of arson in the first degree. You have the right to remain silent." I had raised her since she was 10 years old. I had worked triple shifts at a diner for 7 years so she could buy graphing calculators and prom dresses. I had driven 600 miles through a snowstorm to move her into her freshman dorm at Harvard. I had sat in the back row of her swearing-in ceremony 6 weeks earlier, watching her raise her right hand, crying so hard a stranger handed me her own tissues. She was 25 years old now, the youngest assistant district attorney ever appointed in our state, and the charge she had just read off the warrant was for killing our parents in the house fire of 2009. My parents had died at 3:15 in the morning on a Thursday in March. I was 17. I was sleeping at a friend's house 2 miles away. I had not set the fire. I had never set a fire in my life. I became a certified fire investigator so I could prove it. My name is Margaret Ashford. I'm 32 years old, and I'm an IAAI certified fire investigator for a regional insurance carrier in the Midwest. Before I dive into what happened next, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Also, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Alright, back to the story. For 15 years, I have investigated house fires for a living. I have stood in the wet char of hundreds of homes, breathing the ash of other people's lives. I have cleared 46 homeowners who were falsely accused of burning down their own houses. I have testified in 19 trials. I have sent 6 arsonists to prison. Every case I took for the same reason. Somewhere in a dusty brown file labeled Ashford, 14th March 2009, was the case I could never officially touch. The case of my own parents. The case my uncle made sure got closed as undetermined. The case my uncle spent 15 years slowly, patiently, convincing my little sister I was responsible for. I never thought he would get her to cuff me. I never thought she would be the one holding the warrant. But on that Tuesday morning, with a badge clipped to her belt and not a single tremor in her voice, my sister Evelyn looked me in the face and read me my rights. I understood then that the fire had finally caught up to both of us. My parents were not perfect people, but they were good people. My father, Caleb Ashford, ran a small, independent hardware store in our town. My mother, Marisol, taught 2nd grade at the elementary school across the street. They had been high school sweethearts. They had 2 girls, 7 years apart, and a mortgage that was 2 years away from paid off. On the night of March 13th, 2009, I was sleeping at my best friend Priya's house. We had a chemistry midterm the next morning. Ever, who was 10, was home in her bedroom at the end of the upstairs hallway. At 12:41 in the morning, my mother called my cell phone. I did not answer. I was asleep. She left a voicemail that was 47 seconds long. On the voicemail, she sounded frightened. She said, "Margaret, honey, if you wake up in the night, please call me. Your Uncle Desmond showed up at the house tonight. He is saying things. He is asking about Grandma's will again. Dad asked him to leave twice. I don't love this. Call me when you wake. I love you, baby." At 3:15 in the morning, a neighbor across the street named Mrs. Houston heard glass break. She looked out her window and saw flames at the back of our house. She called 911. By the time the fire trucks arrived, 11 minutes later, the upstairs was gone. My parents were gone. Priya's mother woke me up at 6:45 in the morning with her hand on my shoulder and a look on her face I will never forget. She said there had been an accident at my house. She said my sister was safe. She did not say my parents were safe. She drove me there in her minivan. I was still wearing Priya's borrowed sweatpants. The house was not a house anymore. It was a black shape with the roof caved in and the chimney standing alone like a gravestone. 2 fire trucks were still there. Yellow tape stretched across what used to be our driveway. A deputy named Officer Anderson walked me over to his squad car and made me sit down in the back seat with the door open. He was a gentleman. He had coached my 7th grade softball team. He told me my mother and father had not made it out. He told me Ever had been carried out through her bedroom window by a firefighter named Harlan Beck. He told me Ever was at the Houston's house across the street, wrapped in a blanket, sitting in their kitchen with a glass of juice she was not drinking. I ran to that kitchen. Ever was 10. She was still in her unicorn pajamas. She did not cry when she saw me. She stood up, walked across the kitchen, and climbed into my lap, and she did not speak for the next 4 days. Uncle Desmond was my father's younger brother. He was 39 at the time. He had failed out of 2 community colleges, wrecked 3 marriages, and was running a small construction contracting business out of a trailer on the edge of town. The business had been 3 months behind on payroll that winter. My father had loaned him $8,000 in January. Dad had told Mom at the kitchen table one Sunday that it was the last time. 3 days after the fire, Uncle Desmond showed up at the Houston's house with a social worker and a handshake and a plan. He told the social worker he would take us in. He told the court he would be our legal guardian until I turned 18. He told my mother's sister, my Aunt Saffron, who lived in Oregon and wanted to take us, that the girls needed to stay in the home state for school. He said the words, what Caleb would have wanted 6 times in one meeting. He moved us into his 2-bedroom ranch on the west edge of town. Ever got the smaller bedroom. I got the pull-out couch in the living room. The next week, the insurance check for the house came through. $840,000. Desmond deposited it into a trust he was supposed to manage for us. Within 90 days, Desmond had bought a new truck, paid off his construction company's debts, and started quietly funneling the rest into personal accounts. Mrs. Houston came to Desmond's house 6 weeks after the fire. She brought a casserole. She waited until I walked her out to her car before she said what she had come to say. She said, Margaret, sweetheart, I don't want to stir anything up, but I saw Desmond's truck parked 2 streets over at 2 a.m. that night. The red Silverado with the dent in the tailgate. I know his truck. I've seen it at your parents' house 100 times. She put her hand on my arm. She said, I already told the fire marshal. I don't know what they're going to do with it. But I wanted you to know I told them. I went back inside and asked Desmond where he had been the night of the fire. He said he had been home. I asked him why Mrs. Houston had seen his truck 2 streets from our house at 2 a.m. His face went very still. Then he laughed once and said Mrs. Houston was 69 years old and could not see well at night, and the Silverado had been parked in his driveway the whole night. I walked out to his driveway. The Silverado was not there. He said he had lent it to a friend that afternoon. I was 17. I did not know what to do with the information. I wrote it down in a spiral notebook I kept under the pull-out couch. I kept the notebook. The state-appointed lawyer for the trust told me I had no right to see account statements until I turned 21. Desmond, as legal guardian, controlled everything. He gave us $35 a week for groceries. He told me I was going to need to work if I wanted anything beyond that. I got my first job 8 days after my 17th birthday at a 24-hour pancake house off Route 9. I worked Friday and Saturday overnights, 6 at night to 6 in the morning, for $4.20 an hour plus tips. I slept during the day. I went to school on Monday through Thursday. I graduated 6th in my class. I did not go to prom. I did not go to a 4-year college. I took fire science courses at the community college at night, and by 20, I was working as an entry-level fire investigator for a small insurance outfit. I studied for every certification they had. I passed everyone. Every dollar that was not rent and groceries went into a sock drawer I kept under my mattress. I labeled it Ever. It was for my little sister's future. I promised my dead mother, on a park bench the summer after the fire, that Ever would go to college. Ever would not work 3 jobs. Ever would not sleep on a pull-out couch. Ever would not grow up the way I was growing up. I kept that promise. I kept it even when it cost me everything else. Ever was the smartest child I have ever known. She read Little Women at 8. She won the regional spelling bee at 10, 4 months after the fire, standing on a stage in a dress I had sewn myself from a thrift store tablecloth. She skipped 7th grade. She skipped 10th grade. She was on the honor roll every single semester from 6th through 12th. She stayed up with me on Saturday nights at the pancake house sometimes, doing homework at the corner booth while I refilled coffees for truckers and long-haul drivers. The owner, a wide-shouldered woman named Bev, let Ever sit there for free as long as she did not bother anyone. Ever never bothered anyone. Ever was quiet. Ever was watching. When Ever was 15, she asked me one night out of nowhere if I had set the fire. She asked it the way a child asks whether Santa Claus is real. Not accusing. Just checking. I put down the pot of coffee I was carrying. I sat across from her in the booth. I said, "No. I did not. I would never have hurt Mom and Dad. I would never have hurt you. Who told you that?" She said, "Uncle Desmond. He said he never wanted to say it out loud. But he said sometimes he worries." I told her Uncle Desmond was wrong. She nodded. She went back to her homework. I did not know that night that he had been planting the seed since she was 10. Ever took the SAT at 15 and scored a 1570. She took it again at 16 and scored a 1590. At 17, she applied to every Ivy League school. She wrote her personal essay about losing her parents in a house fire and being raised by a big sister who waited tables. She did not tell me she had written the essay until after she submitted it. She got into 7 of the 8. Harvard offered her a full ride plus a leadership stipend. Stanford offered her a full ride plus a name scholarship. She chose Harvard because it was closer. She said 3 states away was closer than 6. I cried in the pancake house bathroom for 20 minutes the day she told me. Bev came in and sat on the floor with me and handed me paper towels. At her high school graduation, Uncle Desmond stood up during the reception and gave a speech. He said he had taken in 2 orphan girls when no one else would. He said it had not been easy, but love had found a way. He said he was proudest in all his life of this one particular moment. He did not mention me by name once. Ever hugged him on the stage. She hugged me afterward, behind the school where the parents could not see. She whispered in my ear, "I know who really raised me. I love you." I thought that would be enough. It was not enough. Ever was 19, in her second year at Harvard, when the phone calls from Uncle Desmond started to matter. She would call me on Sundays, and then every other Sunday, and then once a month. Her voice got a little more careful each time. She started using phrases I had never heard her say. She said, "Uncle Desmond mentioned." She said, "Uncle Desmond thinks." She said, "I wonder if Mom's life insurance was ever really." In her 3rd year, she did a summer internship in Washington. She did not come home for Christmas. She said it was her course load. Desmond flew out to visit her twice that year. I never flew out. I could not afford it, and she never offered. She graduated summa cum laude. I went to the ceremony. I sat in the bleachers by myself. Desmond sat with Ever in the family section. Aunt Saffron flew in from Oregon and sat next to me and held my hand through the whole thing. She whispered, "He is doing something to her. I can feel it." She got into Yale Law on a full ride. She moved to New Haven. She called me less. She called Desmond more. She came home once, the summer before her 2nd year, for a long weekend. She slept in the guest room of the small 1-bedroom I had bought by then. She was polite. She was distant. She left a day early. I did not understand yet what she was reading on his couch during those visits. She clerked for a federal appeals judge straight out of Yale Law. She moved back home to take a position as an assistant district attorney at 25. Everybody in town wrote news articles about the local girl made good. The paper ran a photo of her in front of the courthouse with a caption that said, "Ashford returns home." The swearing-in ceremony was on a Friday afternoon in February. The courtroom was full. Uncle Desmond sat in the front row, in a navy suit I had never seen him wear. Aunt Saffron could not fly out. I drove 3 hours from a fire scene in another county to make it. I sat in the back row in my work clothes, smelling like wet char. Ever gave a speech after taking the oath. She thanked the judge. She thanked her law school mentors. She thanked her uncle by name. She said he had given her a home after a terrible tragedy and had been the father her father could not be. She did not mention me. She did not mention the 7 years of overnight shifts, the sock drawer, the tablecloth dress, the scholarship forms I filled out for her at 4 in the morning. She thanked one person from her childhood. She thanked the man who had killed our parents. Desmond cried in the front row. He was a beautiful crier. He had been practicing for a long time. I left before the reception. 6 weeks after the swearing-in, Ever called me on a Tuesday night. It was the first time she had called me in 4 months. Her voice was different. It was quieter. She said, "Margaret, did you ever see the fireproof box Mom kept in her closet? The one she kept important documents in?" I said yes. I said I had assumed it burned in the fire. She said Uncle Desmond had recovered it the week after the fire and had kept it in his garage for safekeeping. He had given it to her last weekend when she moved into her new apartment. He said it contained some things she was old enough to handle now. Inside the box, Ever said she had found a letter in my handwriting, dated March 10th, 2009, 3 days before the fire, addressed to no one. Folded into an envelope, she read me a line from it. The line she read was, "I cannot stand how much they love her and not me. I think about what I would do if it were just her and me in the world. I think about it every night now. I am going to do something. I just have not decided what." I stopped breathing. I had never written that letter. I had never written those sentences. I had never thought those thoughts. But I had kept a spiral notebook that year, and Uncle Desmond had emptied the attic twice. He had my handwriting. I told Ever the letter was fake. I told her Desmond had forged it. I told her he had had access to my notebooks for 2 years after the fire. I told her every word I had just heard her read was something I had never written. I told her to bring it to me. I told her to let me hire a forensic document examiner. She said she could not. She said it was in the chain of custody of the district attorney's office now. She said a formal cold case review had been opened. She said she had recused herself from the case, but the charging documents were already being drafted. She said she was sorry. She said she had to believe what the evidence showed. She hung up. 4 months of grand jury sessions. 4 months of forensic handwriting analysis by a state examiner whose wife, I would later learn, was a friend of Desmond's girlfriend. 4 months of Ever not answering my calls. On a Tuesday morning in June, she walked into my office with 2 state detectives behind her. She had recused herself from prosecuting, but nobody had told her she could not be present for the arrest. She had chosen to be present for the arrest. She placed the arrest warrant on my desk. She read me my rights. She did not cry. The 2 detectives walked me out through the lobby in handcuffs. 3 of my coworkers were watching. 1 of them was filming. They held me for 41 hours. The bail hearing was on Thursday morning. The prosecutor, a man named Hollis Brand, who had been Desmond's weekend golf partner for 11 years, asked the judge to deny bail. He said I was a flight risk. He said I was a danger to my sister. He said I had waited 15 years to be caught and might disappear at any moment. The judge granted bail at $500,000. 10% down, cash bond $50,000. I did not have $50,000 in cash. Aunt Saffron flew in from Oregon on a red eye. She had been quietly saving for 15 years, ever since she had lost the custody fight. She had put away $42,000 for a day she hoped would never come. Priya, my friend from high school, who is now a pediatric dentist, wired me the other $8,000 the morning of the hearing. I walked out of the county jail at 4:11 in the afternoon on Thursday, wearing the clothes I had been arrested in, smelling like the jail blanket. A local news crew was waiting outside the courthouse. They shouted my name. They asked if I had killed my parents. They asked if I had a comment. I kept my head down. I got into Aunt Saffron's rental car. I cried for the first time since the arrest. I did not cry because I was scared. I cried because Ever had not come to the bail hearing. The story broke nationally within 48 hours. Prosecutor's sister charged with killing parents in 2009 fire. Prominent to Evelyn Ashford recuses from case against biological sister. The cable news shows ran the photo of me being walked out of my office on a loop. They paired it with Ever's official headshot. They cut to footage of Uncle Desmond standing in his driveway, telling a reporter that he was heartbroken but not surprised, that he had suspected for years, that he had prayed every day that he was wrong. My insurance company put me on unpaid administrative leave. My case files were reassigned. The badge they had issued me for 11 years was collected on a Friday afternoon by a human resources associate who would not make eye contact. I walked out of that office, the second office in a week I had been walked out of, holding a cardboard box with a coffee mug and a framed photo of me and Ever at her Harvard graduation. The lease on my apartment was renewing the next month. My landlord called and told me she was not renewing. Aunt Saffron paid for a motel room by the week. I slept in it for 3 weeks. I did not leave except to meet with my lawyer. My lawyer was a woman named Imani Kenworth. She was 41 years old. She had defended 6 people wrongly accused of arson in her career. She was the only attorney in 3 states who would take my case. Imani asked me, on our 3rd meeting, if there was anyone still alive who had worked the original fire scene in 2009. I told her the lead fire marshal on the case had been a man named Ozias Lathrop. He had retired 2 years after my parents' fire. I had not seen him since I was 18. I had heard he had moved to a cabin in the next county over. We drove out that Saturday. The cabin was at the end of a gravel road with a wood stove chimney and a red door. Ozias was 74. He was thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were the same sharp gray. He recognized me before I finished saying my name. He said, "Ashford, you finally came." He invited us in. He made us coffee. He did not rush. He said, "Your parents' fire was arson." I knew it in the first 90 minutes. I filed my preliminary report that evening. I listed accelerant patterns in 3 locations on the first floor. I listed a broken basement window with the glass scattered outward, not inward. I listed a disabled smoke detector in the upstairs hallway with a fresh battery pulled. I named a suspect. I named your uncle. He said, "My supervisor pulled my report on the Monday. He told me the case was being reclassified as undetermined. He told me to burn my notes." He said, "I did not burn my notes." Ozias Lathrop walked us down into the root cellar of his cabin. He had a metal footlocker under a canvas tarp. Inside the footlocker, in a 9x12 manila envelope, were the original handwritten field notes from the Ashford fire of March 14, 2009. He had written them in blue ballpoint on yellow legal paper at 3 a.m. while the house was still smoldering. He had photocopied them and hidden the photocopies in 3 different locations. The envelope had his name on the front and the word Ashford in the corner. The notes listed the accelerant pattern. The notes listed the disabled detector. The notes listed Mrs. Houston's 2:12 a.m. witness statement, identifying a red Chevrolet Silverado pickup with a dented tailgate parked on the next street over. The notes listed Desmond's name. Imani photographed every page in the footlocker with a forensic camera. She took possession of the originals under a signed chain of custody. Ozias signed an affidavit stating the notes were authentic, had been in his continuous private possession since the morning of March 14, 2009, and had been withheld from the official case file by his supervisor, a man named Garrett Fisher, under circumstances he believed at the time to be improper, and still believed today. Imani asked Ozias why he had not come forward before. Ozias said, "Nobody asked." He said, "You never asked, Margaret, and for 15 years, nobody else did either." I sat on his couch and I put my face in my hands. I had kept my mother's last voicemail for 15 years. Every time I upgraded my phone, I did the same thing. I played the voicemail into a digital recorder. I saved the digital recorder file as a WAV on a thumb drive. I mailed a copy of the thumb drive to a safety deposit box in Aunt Saffron's name in Oregon. I had 4 copies in 4 different places on 4 different coasts. I had never played the voicemail forever. Not once. She had been 10. She had been traumatized. The voicemail made our mother sound frightened, and I could not bear to put that sound into my little sister's head when she was a child, and by the time she was old enough, we were already drifting apart. Imani asked if she could play the voicemail at the pre-trial motion hearing. I said yes. The hearing was set for a Tuesday in September, 4 months after the arrest. The courtroom was full. Hollis Brand sat at the prosecution table. A junior ADA sat next to him. Ever was in the 3rd row, in a dark suit, alone. Imani stood at the podium and told the judge she had newly discovered evidence. She laid out the original 2009 field notes. The judge read them for 11 minutes in silence. Imani then asked the court to hear a 47-second audio file, authenticated by the carrier as received by my phone at 12:41 a.m. on March 14, 2009. The judge allowed it. The courtroom was silent. The bailiff played the voicemail on the courtroom sound system. My mother's voice filled the room. She sounded tired. She sounded scared. She said my name the way she had said it my whole life. "Margaret, honey, if you wake up in the night, please call me. Your Uncle Desmond showed up at the house tonight. He is saying things. He is asking about Grandma's will again. Dad asked him to leave twice. I don't like this. Call me when you wake. I love you, baby." 47 seconds. It felt like an hour. When it ended, the courtroom did not move. I heard one spectator in the gallery crying softly. Hollis Brand stared at his own legal pad without writing. The judge leaned back in her chair and exhaled through her nose. Ever, in the third row, had both hands over her mouth. I could see her shoulders shaking. She did not look at me. She could not. Amani said to the court, "Your Honor, my client received this voicemail at 12:41 in the morning, 2 hours and 36 minutes before the fire. The voicemail references the defendant's uncle, Desmond Ashford, the same individual named in the suppressed original fire marshal's report. The same individual whose truck was identified by a neighbor witness at 2:12 in the morning on the next street over. I would respectfully ask this court to question whose jealousy, exactly, was the motive here." The judge ordered a recess. She did not come back for 90 minutes. During the recess, Amani walked over to the gallery rail. She handed Ever a photograph. It was a photograph of a small metal object. A red and silver gas can cap with a chipped rim. Amani said, loud enough for the bailiff to hear, "Your sister pulled this out of the debris at your house when she was 17 years old. She pulled it out 2 days after the fire. During the public walkthrough. She kept it in a sealed evidence bag in a climate-controlled storage locker for 15 years. She never touched it with bare skin once. We had it tested last month. There are 3 partial thumbprints on it. 2 of them belong to your Uncle Desmond. The third is a palm smear that matches the same profile. The cap is from a red 5-gallon gas container sold at 3 regional hardware stores in March of 2009. Your uncle purchased one on March 11, 2009. We have the store receipt." She put the photograph on the rail and walked back to the defense table. Ever picked up the photograph. She did not put it down for the rest of the recess. She stared at the rim. She stared at her own hands. Once, she looked up at me. Once. Her eyes were wet. Her mouth was open. I did not nod at her. I did not smile. I did not soften my face. I had raised her. I had loved her for 25 years. But on that Tuesday, I was not her sister. I was her evidence. When the court came back from recess, Amani did not stop. She introduced a third exhibit, a certified forensic accounting report prepared by a CPA named Odalis Bremner. The report traced every dollar of the 2009 insurance payout, $840,000, from its original deposit into a trust account in the names of Margaret and Everlyn Ashford, through 61 separate transactions over 5 years, into Uncle Desmond's personal holdings. Of the $840,000, $94,000 had been spent on documented expenses for the minor children. The remaining $746,000 had been moved, $120,000 into his construction company to pay off back debts, $211,000 into the down payment on a new house he bought in 2011 and rented out, $260,000 into a second property in 2013. The rest into personal vehicles, 2 boats, 1 vacation to Aruba, and $81,000 in cash withdrawals over 7 years, averaging $11,000 per year. The trust had been drained to $41 and change by the time I turned 21, and the state officially transferred control of nothing to me. The report was certified. The report was forensic grade. The report was admissible. The judge looked up from the pages. She looked at Hollis Brand. She said, "Mr. Brand, I'm going to ask you one question. Where is Desmond Ashford right now?" Brand did not have an answer. Desmond was not in town. He had driven to a motel in Tennessee the morning after my arrest, 4 months earlier. He had told his girlfriend he was going fishing. He had left her with $700 in cash and a note. He had not returned. He had been moving between 3 motels in 3 states for 4 months, paying in cash, using a burner phone. The FBI found him on a Wednesday, 31 hours after the pretrial hearing. He was eating breakfast at a Waffle House off Interstate 40 in western Tennessee. He was wearing a baseball cap and a gray windbreaker. He did not resist. He asked the arresting agent if he could finish his coffee. The agent said no. They brought him back to our state on Friday. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated arson, 1 count of obstruction of justice, 1 count of wire fraud, 1 count of elder fraud for the misuse trust that was supposed to protect minors, and 1 count of conspiracy. The conspiracy charge referenced an unnamed second person. We still did not know who that was. His bail was denied. The charges against me were formally dismissed on Monday morning at 10:15 by a different judge with prejudice after a joint motion by the defense and the state. Hollis Brand did not appear at the hearing. He was on administrative leave pending an internal ethics review. I walked out of the courtroom with Aunt Saffron on one arm and Imani on the other. Ever was not there. Ever came to my apartment that Friday night. She did not call ahead. She drove 3 hours from the county seat. She pulled up at 11:40 in a gray sedan. I had never seen her drive. She sat on my porch in the dark for 26 minutes before she knocked. I opened the door. She had been crying. Her eye makeup was dried in streaks on her cheeks. Her hair was pulled back. She was wearing sweatpants and a law school hoodie from Yale. She looked 25 and 10 at the same time. She said, "Margaret, please." I stood in the doorway. I did not step back. I did not invite her in. She said, "I believed him. For 15 years. I was 10 years old, and he told me stories and I believed them. I built my whole life on believing them. I chose this career because of him. I chose my apartment because he helped me pick it. I bought my car from his friend. Every piece of my adult life is something he put in my hands and I took. Margaret, I am begging you, let me come inside." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the pancake house. I thought about the sock drawer. I thought about the tablecloth dress. I thought about the day I walked her into her Harvard dorm. I said, "Everlyn, I forgive you." I said, "But not tonight." I closed the door. Desmond's trial started in February of the following year and lasted 19 days. I testified for 6 hours on the 4th day. Ever testified for 4 hours on the 7th day. She took the stand for the prosecution against her uncle, and she did not look at him once. She walked the jury through every conversation he had ever had with her about me. Every whispered worry. Every forged doubt. She testified about the fireproof box. She testified about the forged letter. She testified about the night I told her on the phone the letter was fake, and I needed her to trust me, and she did not. The jury was out for 5 hours and 40 minutes. They returned with guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Uncle Desmond to 2 consecutive life sentences with the possibility of parole after 37 years, plus 21 additional years on the fraud and obstruction counts to run concurrently. He was 55 years old. He would die in prison. As the bailiffs walked him out, he turned his head toward the gallery. He looked for Ever. She was staring at the floor. He looked for me. I held his eyes. I did not smile. I did not glare. I let him see my face the way my mother had looked at him the last time she asked him to leave the house. Aunt Saffron squeezed my hand. Then the doors closed behind him. It was the first peaceful breath I had taken in 15 years. On the Sunday after the sentencing, Ever and I met at the cemetery. We had not spoken in the 3 months since the porch. She was in a black coat, I was in a gray one. We stood at our parents' shared headstone for a long time without saying anything. She had brought white lilies. I had brought lavender, which had been our mother's favorite. She said, "I want to earn my way back. Not fast. Not dramatic. Over years, if you will let me." I said, "Years is what we have." She asked if she could hug me. I said yes. I hugged her for 10 seconds. Then I let go. As we walked back to the cars, she mentioned something her office had pulled during discovery that the defense team had never followed up on. In the conspiracy count, there had been an unnamed second person. The prosecutor had believed it was Hollis Brand, the disgraced ADA. But a handwritten note from Desmond's motel room, recovered during his arrest in Tennessee, had referenced a first name. A first name I had not heard in 15 years. A first name that was not Hollis. A first name that belonged to my mother's younger brother. My uncle Tobias, who lived in Florida, who had flown in for the funeral, who had hugged me at the grave and told me he would always be there. I have not called him yet, but I will, and when I do, I will tell you exactly what he says. If this story touched something deep within you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice belongs here. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, or you're still piecing it together quietly, know you're not alone. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and stay close. The next story is waiting for you.